Hello everyone and welcome back to another Babylon Irons video. This time it is a player breakdown for someone we've finally signed. We've signed very, very quickly. Pablo Felipe is a hammer, signing as our replacement for Füllkrug very early on in the transfer window. We know there's other players potentially coming in as well, which we'll do breakdown videos on in a separate video. But this is all about Pablo Felipe, what he can bring to West Ham. And rumours are, as of recording this, he could actually be involved in the Wolves game as well today as of recording. So it'll be interesting to see if he gets any minutes if he is in the squad. But let's talk about Pablo Felipe, Mike, and what West Ham fans can expect from someone that is pretty raw, pretty unknown to a lot of people, and presents maybe an opportunity to go under the radar a bit in terms of the signings that we make in this January transfer window. Obviously, Füllkrug's departed for AC Milan, so there is an emphasis on any striker that comes in, whether they're raw, whether they've got experience, to score goals and help West Ham get out of the relegation battle that we currently find ourselves in. So talk to me about Pablo Felipe. I mean, he's still only, very, very young, 21 years old, obviously currently playing at Gil Vicente, scored 5 goals this season and has been playing pretty well in the Portuguese league. So
that's 5 goals last season, Frank. This is last season's.
Cool. Yeah. So yeah, sorry, last season's data. So talk to me about Felipe and what he can bring to West Ham.
Yeah, so I haven't watched him nearly as much as I would like to give a real full compelling kind of view on him. But from what I've been able to watch of him and from what you can see statistically, he's a player that's going to give us a lot of energy. He is relentless defensively. From what I've been seeing, I don't know why, but I keep getting these kind of feels of Diego Costa, nowhere near as aggressive. I will put that out there. In terms of someone who's willing to put himself about defensively, he's not shy about trying to impose himself. Now, he's not the tallest, but he's got good physical strength. If he can add to that strength as well, then I think he'll do very well in the Premier League. What would be great for us, and what is very typical of a kind of Nuno striker, I guess, is someone that's quite unselfish, willing to do the horrible stuff, really. Jimenez is an example of someone who maybe wouldn't always be involved in the goals, but he's involved in just chasing people down, making it difficult, putting himself about in both those defensive and kind of offensive duels. And he's certainly someone who's going to do that. He's going to constantly be trying to get in the face of defenders. If they've got the ball, if there's a loose touch, he's going to try and pounce on it. There's a couple of goals you can see that he scored this season where it has been through him getting involved, trying to win the ball back high, trying to get it kind of passing it over to teammates and stuff. He has got a good shot on him. Obviously, in the Premier League, he's going to get far less time. But when you watch the clips and the goals, he does tend to shoot quite early. So he doesn't often give the goalkeeper a chance to kind of set. He will shoot from outside the area, left foot, right foot. He's not really that bothered. He's got a good head on him as well. So he's got, I think, one of the goals he scored from a corner this year. He's obviously scored a couple of penalties, which is quite a good thing in that it's only his real kind of first real starting season, and he's already been put onto penalties.
Confidence thing as well, isn't it?
Yeah, they're massively overachieving as well. And you can argue, well, what he's doing is unsustainable. From a statistic point of view, yeah, it probably is unsustainable, right? He has very limited shots. I think it's like 1.48, something like that, per game currently. But his conversion rate and his ability to get shots on target are incredible. He gets very few chances a game, but his kind of goals to shots ratio is complete disparity. I think he's only expected this season to have scored around about 4 goals, something like that at most. However, he's on like 10 goals this season, which is, it's a great return. But again, that's because he's a player that shoots quickly and he's got very good accuracy when he does shoot. So when you shoot quickly as a striker, you don't give a goalkeeper a chance to set, and you take advantage of those kind of micro kind of gaps you may get in a game, which obviously bodes well in the Premier League because you have far less time, which has been very heavily highlighted by Somerville, who's taken 10, 11, 12 touches, it seems like, whenever he gets an opportunity to shoot. Whereas what I've seen with Pablo so far is that he tends to like to shoot a bit earlier, which is great because he's going to have less time. There is still going to be that needing to evolve to the Premier League, but if he's already taking his shots early, that means he's going to be less likely to take that one kind of steadying one, that next one to pass it, and then to have a shot.
Sure. Yeah, but talk to me about these statistics here, because obviously these are from the previous season that we wanted to look at, and it kind of points to some of the points that you were mentioning there, Mike, around aerial duels, his defensive, combative nature as well. But in terms of his expected goals and expected assists, he's very much been overperforming in that regard. And you can see there from a goal conversion perspective, he's very high percentile across the top leagues when you're comparing him to other strikers. So yeah, talk to me about these statistics and what strengths this kind of emphasizes for Pablo Felipe coming to West Ham.
Yeah, I think the fact they've got, when you look at the goals per 90, so for every 90 minutes he's played, it's 0.49. So it's almost, if he was to continue at that rate, obviously we've got to talk about this being the Portuguese league. So the defenders and the goalkeeping isn't necessarily at the same level as the Premier League. But if he was to continue at the rate he has here in Portuguese league, that's almost a goal every other game. So a 1 in 2 strike rate is damn impressive, no matter how you put it. That's when you think of like Gyökeres, who was scoring goals for fun for Sporting, if you then maybe transfer him into a bigger team in Portugal and he's continuing at that rate, or getting more shots and able to convert at the rate he's converting, then you're looking at a player that's probably going to get 20, maybe 30 goals in a season. Just by kind of extrapolating that out within there. Obviously, the Premier League, different story. We can look at someone like Gyökeres as to how he's transitioned from the Portuguese league to the Premier League and how he isn't scoring as many. There is going to be a tail off. There's no disputing that. It just is. However, Jorge Mendes has brought players to the Premier League consistently and done well, or even to England. When you look at Ruben Neves, you look at Jota, for example, these were, I say Jota wasn't a player probably maybe widely known when he came over. Was arguably a bit of a left winger, but look what he did with his career in the Premier League and how he developed. And you wouldn't have put him as maybe a traditional centre forward. However, went on to do bloody great things with Wolves and then Liverpool, obviously. But like I said, with Pedro, defensive side, he's got all of the work rate we need, because we need players who are going to be unselfish, are going to work extremely hard, and he's going to do that, which is when we're chasing games and you maybe need to hassle and harry, we're going to have a player who's willing to do that. Or if in a game where we're looking to maybe protect a lead and we need, again, a centre forward to lead that line and put pressure on the opposition to not give them easy possession, again, it's a player that's going to do that as well, which is great to see. And he has operated as a lone striker, which is good. Again, he's got decent movement, so we can get the ball into the area, which is, again, something we don't do nearly enough. And he does seem to attack the front post, which is something that makes me very happy, because we very rarely attack the front post. But if we can get in decent crosses, he's got a good head on him. If he's got a good head on him, so he can put them, put those chances away.
Sure. Yeah. Let's take a look at how he compared to Nicholas Füllkrug in the previous season, and just looking at some of the differences in data. Obviously, Füllkrug's someone that's now departed for AC Milan. Pablo Felipe is the new striker to come into West Ham. I think from a statistics perspective, Pablo has been a much better striker in the recent season, in the last sort of 365 days when we're looking at the data. And I guess some of the biggest questions that Pablo Felipe is going to have to answer is how quickly he can adapt to the Premier League. Because obviously you rightly talk about Gyökeres, Mike, and how he's struggled to adapt into this Arsenal team after scoring goals for absolute fun in Portugal. How do you feel like he's going to translate into the Premier League? Because it actually looks like some of his characteristics are quite suited for the Premier League. But obviously it's a very different ballgame, and the speed of the Premier League. I think that's one thing I noticed from when we were looking at the goals for Pablo Felipe is the time you get on the ball. Although Pablo is, obviously shooting quite early, it's a completely different ballgame. So how quickly do you think he is going to be able to adjust to the speed of the Premier League?
I guess it depends on his attitude. I think when you listen to the words he's saying, I think someone said to me, roughly translated, he's saying that he's willing to run through brick walls for Nuno. He really respects him. Obviously, his dad played with Nuno as well. Obviously respects him as a manager, and for giving him this opportunity. He knows he's a young player. He knows he has deficiencies, but what is good is the fact that he's clearly saying that he will work at his hardest. So even if there are elements of his game that are not functioning as well as we would hope, because again, it's that adaptation. What will come is a player that's going to work hard. And I made the reference about Diafra Sakho on our Twitter as well. When he came over, not very much fanfare. It was kind of not derided, but it was written off because he come from Ligue 2, even written off by Big Sam as well at the time. And he came in and was a player who brought the form that he had the previous year into West Ham. And that's the other thing, is he has form and he has confidence. That is something that we as a team don't really have. And yes, whilst he doesn't know the players, he is a player that has that fox in the box mentality and will sniff at chances, and he will have a snapshot. Bowen is probably one of the only really ones that we have who tend to do that type of shooting. Will shoot early, will kind of shoot at the near post for the goalkeeper and try and catch them off guard. What I've liked from what I've seen with Pablo is that he doesn't seem to be afraid about getting involved in those duels. And in fairness to Gyökeres, I think one of the things that has prevented him from maybe being as consistent this year with Arsenal is that Arsenal still are working out how to play with a centre forward. There's a lot of runs that Gyökeres does that Arsenal players are not feeding and not playing into him. So I think Gyökeres could be a different story next year when he's far more settled. But I think what you can also see is that he's allowed Arsenal to push teams higher. If anything else, at least push teams higher, because there's someone always looking to go in behind and looks to occupy the defenders. And this is something we can do now. One of the things I think is going to be good for us is that you're going to be able to say to Callum Wilson, just empty your tank, just go hard at it for 60, 70 minutes. And then we're going to bring on Pablo. And if Pablo doesn't work well, then we're going to have Tati coming in very soon as well. So there is that other option that you could also, to help support him, put a player up top with him. And I think maybe Pablo, we may see more in a 2 when we're chasing games. Obviously, he will play it as a 1 from time to time, but I think we probably will see him being either supported by Bowen quite heavily, or being supported by, say, a Wilson or maybe even Tati, who one has experience in the league and is experienced, the other one is an experienced centre forward. So I think his attitude is one that's going to allow him to adapt. But again, he's coming in at a proper sink or swim moment for West Ham. And the thing that I look at as well is that I do think this to be a player that, if the worst to happen, we go down, this does give us a centre forward for the Championship. And based on what I've seen, he would be a very good addition in the Championship for us as well. Sure. And I also don't really see Jorge Mendes having many kind of, for lack of a better term, mugs on his books as well. He's bringing a player over for a reason, not just for a pay packet, but he's bringing a player over as well because there is a view clearly between him and Nuno that this is a player that can bring something for us.
For sure. Talk me through these scatter plots of some of the data from last season for Pablo Felipe and what it kind of points to from a West Ham perspective.
Yeah, the crazy bit is, like, when we look at that scatter graph, what essentially we're looking at is how many shots he has, per 90, or how many touches in the area. So from the perspective of, in the minutes he's played for the team he's played in, it's not a team that necessarily creates a lot of opportunities. They're not necessarily a top team in Portugal. So he doesn't get many touches in the area. And if you look at the top one, he has a below average. He has an above average when it comes to goals per 90, but a below average touches. So he doesn't get many opportunities in the area to get the ball at his feet, or to have kind of many kind of shots on goal. However, whilst he has limited touches and limited shots, his goals are well above average when you look at it as well. When you look at on the right-hand side, again, touches in the area, very low, goals very high. He got his conversion, again, is above 30%. It's almost 40%. So he is one of the kind of almost outliers. He's well above the average when it comes to his conversion in terms of the shots he has and getting goals per 90. We've already said he's scoring almost a goal every other game. When you look at the statistics last year, if that was extrapolated over the course of a season and he was able to have maintained that, that would have been, literally a goal every, goal 1 in 2, which is a phenomenal rate for a striker. It shows someone that also, when you kind of see that he doesn't have many shots either at any point in a game, doesn't get many kind of touches. It just shows that it's a player that doesn't necessarily need high value opportunities. He just needs a sniff of a chance and he will take that opportunity, or at least he will take the shot. And because he does well in terms of getting his shots on target, he can tend to score quite often.
Would you say there's maybe, parallels to Callum Wilson in that sense, in terms of obviously when he's in that box, there isn't many better strikers actually in the Premier League than Callum Wilson in terms of actually finishing those chances. And obviously playing West Ham, he's going to have a limited number of touches in the box anyway. So it probably suits him as well.
Yeah, well, look at Antonio as well. We know he could be profligate, but he also, again, someone didn't necessarily always get many shots. So when he did, and when West Ham do, the reason we did so well under Moyes was because we had players basically performing above the expectation. They were taking opportunities to being incredibly clinical. You weren't getting many opportunities in a game, but when they did, they were taking those chances. And this is somewhat similar to what we're seeing with Pablo last year. And obviously this year, again, he's also been performing well above expectation in terms of his shooting and what he should be performing to. So if you have a striker that doesn't require many shots in a game, doesn't have many shots on, or shooting opportunities, if at all, but he's scoring, it's great. And I think this year he's almost, I think it's 0.8 goals per 90. So again, he's almost a goal a game. So for every 90 minutes he plays this year, he's almost scoring. Again, he's taking penalties this year, which is helping. But to have that level of confidence coming into your team is absolutely huge. And if you've got a striker who's getting, above 50% of his shots on target, and his conversion rate is, almost through the roof in terms of, comparatively to other players, there's nothing there really to be negative about. The only concern is the quality in the Premier League at this point in his development that bridge too far, or is it too early? And can he bring that form with him into the league? And I think at least the one good thing is that he's very much a feast and famine kind of person. He feasts on goals, but he's famished when it comes to opportunities. So he'll have much the same with West Ham. So hopefully that same kind of mentality or the same kind of approach and ability that he's seen this year comes across with him. So I'm kind of excited about this because I haven't seen enough of him to really kind of, go, I think he's going to do this, I think he's going to do that. There's a good level of unknown about him. There are elements of the game he needs to prove, like his touch. I think it can be, under pressure, it can kind of miscontrol a bit and so on. But he does have pretty good feet. He does draw fouls quite well. One of the goals this year, he did jinx past, I think, 1 or 2 players and then taps it in with it when they, I say tap. It's a very good shot with his left foot into the bottom corner. But he's going to need to also be that kind of player that's going to need to have to draw fouls for us. He's going to have to, like we saw with Antonio, and why Antonio did so well for us, why Arnautovic did so well for us, that the fact that they were wingers, they're used to having to fashion opportunities to take players on and to beat players. That's why I think we've always done really well with converted wingers, because they're players that are used to getting the ball, turning, running at a player, and then looking to beat them, going, dropping the left shoulder, going to the right, and then getting, a quick kind of shot off, or, in their case, what usually would have been a cross. So I think that's translated quite well. And at least he seems to have that ability and that confidence to go, I'm going to get the ball and I'm going to drive into space. I'm going to kind of take a player on. We need that aggressiveness, which is why I kind of mentioned some part of me sees a bit of a Diego Costa. He's not as aggressive, but a Diego Costa in that he's willing to be aggressive with the ball and go forward with it. He's willing to be aggressive defensively. He doesn't have that kind of crazy loon inside him that
he might do.
he may just very well do. But there's elements of that I see and go, oh, I remember Costa just coming in like that, just coming flying in from the side, bounding a player to the floor, winning the ball and running off with it. And you see that in some of the clips when you watch him defend, which is kind of what triggers me to go, oh, yeah, that I can see that comparison for myself.
Sure.
But it's whether, again, he can bring that forward. And someone like Diego Costa, for example, I think he was only, until he was 24, really, where he really started to flourish as a player. It took him a while to kind of come through as a player with that kind of, I guess, mentality. But I'm confident that he will be of use for us. If not this season, next season, I think he could really come to the fore. But I know, but yeah, our big problem is that this season is slightly precarious.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I think that gives a good overview. Obviously, he is relatively unknown. He's a player that's come up quite fast and is performing really, really well, above expectations when we look at the data from a conversion perspective. And as you say, he's going to have to be used to that style at West Ham, because the way Nuno plays, we don't particularly create lots of chances. We don't have lots of touches in the box. You know, we're not feeding strikers with loads of chances. So that clinical nature could be the difference between us staying up and going down this season. And again, we mentioned it before, but he could be potentially involved in the Wolves game or the Forest game in a few days. So we'll definitely be looking out for that. Obviously, he's still very young. He's still very raw, as you kind of alluded to as well, Mike. His touches can be a little bit wayward. His passing still needs to improve. But overall, it looks like it could be a potentially decent signing for West Ham for the value that he's coming in at as well. But let us down below in the comments, are you excited for Pablo to be joining West Ham? What are you most looking forward to seeing him about him in a West Ham shirt? And do you think he's going to be one of the players to help us get out of the relegation bid that we currently find ourselves in? So if you enjoyed the breakdown, make sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel for more content. And Mike, until the next one,
Come on, you